Okay, so picture this. You're plugging in your electric car, or maybe you hear about a new business opening up nearby, needing loads of power. It's sort of the drumbeat of modern life, right? We always need more energy.
Yeah, it's constant.
But then you look out, maybe across a place like the Hoeksche Ward here in the Netherlands, and it's all these green fields. Classic Dutch landscape.
Right, that contrast. Like from the Westmus farm they mentioned, you can actually see the Rotterdam skyline, the lights from Pernis.
Exactly. That industrial glow on the horizon. But you're standing in this, well, pretty peaceful farmland.
And that's the clash, isn't it? The need for more juice, more infrastructure, running right up against the way things are, the land, the people living there.
It really is. And that's what we're digging into today. We're going to explore the whole complex situation around expanding the power grid right here in the Hoeksche Ward.
We've got some interesting material articles, maybe some of your own notes if you've been following this kind of thing.
Yeah, the idea is to really pull out the key insights, understand the push and pull between this big infrastructure project for, say, a business park.
Which needed power for 12 companies, plus 9 more coming.
Right. That versus the impact on the actual landowners, the farmers like Arie Vorhorst and his neighbors. That's the core of it.
It's a story playing out everywhere, really. How do you balance that broader need with individual rights and land?
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Back to April 2022. It seems like the first contact from Stedin, the grid operator, was, well, maybe not ideal.
Yeah, the source material paints a picture of someone from Stedin just showing up at Yvonne Verhorst's door, apparently.
With a confusing map.
Yeah, a map she couldn't really make sense of, asking her to sign off on putting cables across their land. Just like that.
Wow. And Arie's reaction? Comparing it to asking a farmer to cultivate virgin land.
Verboene maakt grond. Yeah, it really hits home, that feeling of intrusion,
Yeah.
Disrupting something fundamental.
Definitely. Makes you wonder about that initial strategy from Stedin. Did they underestimate the connection these farmers have to the land?
It kind of seems like it. That natural resistance you'd expect when someone wants to dig up your property, even if you get the bigger picture need.
I mean, nobody's keen on having power cables buried in their fields.
Right.
Even if they understand why, generally speaking.
Of course not.
But what's interesting is what Arie Verhorst did next. He didn't just complain. He organized.
Right. He set up that email group with the other 16 landowners who were affected.
That's a pretty proactive collective response.
And this specific case, it's really just one example of a nationwide thing, isn't it? The article points that out.
Yeah, the push for climate goals means the whole grid needs beefing up, connecting wind farms, solar parks, new housing, new businesses.
And you see the evidence popping up. Those little electrical boxes taking up parking spots or transformers replacing trees sometimes.
It feels like the infrastructure is just getting more visible, more present in our daily lives. So why was this expansion in the Hoeksche Ward so urgent? It's called a congestie.
Yeah, congestion area. Basically, it means the existing grid there was maxed out. It couldn't handle more demand without serious upgrades.
Like for that business park in Putterschik they mentioned.
Exactly. Those businesses, existing and new, plus things like EV charging stations, they all needed a lot more power.
So what was the scale of Stedin's initial plan?
It was pretty significant. 4 cables, each 13 kilometers long, and inside each of those, 3 smaller red cables, about 6 centimeters thick.
Wow. How much power is that?
The estimate was roughly enough for about 8,000 households. So yeah, a big jump in capacity for the area.
Okay, but what if the farmers just said no? Flat out refused? What were their legal options? It sounds like they were a bit stuck.
Well, that's where this principle of algemeen nut public interest comes in.
Yeah.
It's a big factor in Dutch law. Meaning, if Stedin took it to court, the argument that the project serves the greater public good usually wins out over individual landowner objections.
Okay. So the farmers probably knew this.
Yeah, the article suggests they were aware, maybe from other cases, and also knew that fighting it legally would be, well, expensive and likely unsuccessful.
And the initial compensation offer wasn't much help either.
No, initially it was apparently just for the value of the crops they'd lose that season. Didn't give them much leverage.
Right, a tough spot. But crucially, it seems Stedin learned from that first encounter in 2022. Their whole approach shifted.
Yes, and they seem quite open about it. J.S. Underwater, their land affairs specialist, is quoted saying, now we do it differently.
How so? What changed?
More proactive communication, basically. Sending info by email, making phone calls, holding open house events in Lupavanden where people could come and ask questions.
Getting the contractor involved early to explain things too?
Exactly. Much more transparency, trying to build understanding before asking for signatures. A big shift from just knocking on the door.
Makes sense. And the compensation improved too, right? It wasn't just about lost crops anymore.
Correct. They moved to paying per square meter, and the rate depended on the crop type.
Okay.
And they worked with the LTO, the main Dutch agricultural organization, to figure out those rates, which probably helped with trust.
So what did the package include?
There was an upfront payment plus a signing bonus for the easement agreement, the Zeitlich Overeenkomst.
That's the legal agreement, acknowledging the cables are there and restricting future use.
Precisely. It gets recorded officially. And then there was extra compensation for land used temporarily as a work area.
Do we know the figures?
Yeah, the article mentions €4 per square meter for the easement itself and €1.62 per square meter for the temporary work areas.
Okay, so definitely more substantial. But even with better compensation, the farmers still weren't exactly jumping for joy.
No, and you can understand why. Money helps, but it doesn't change the fact that you've got someone else's infrastructure permanently under your land.
Yeah, that feeling of it being there and maybe worrying about future resale value or restrictions.
Right. Enthusiasm was probably too much to ask for.
Which brings us to the technology, this guided drilling, gestured boring. That sounds like it was a real game changer here.
Oh, absolutely. A huge difference. Instead of digging a trench, like a meter wide and 13 kilometers long.
Which would have been massively disruptive.
Totally. Instead, they used this drilling technique. They only needed small entry and exit points, maybe 1 by 2 meters, at about 15 spots along the route.
And then they drill underground.
Yeah, a drill head goes underground, pulling the cables through protective PVC pipes behind it, much less surface disturbance.
And Ari Verhorst's reaction seemed really positive about this change.
Yes, he specifically mentioned avoiding the long-term problem of soil settling, which is a nightmare for farmers after big excavations. With the drilling, the impact is much more localized.
What about Stedin's view? Was it an easy choice for them?
Well, Underwater from Stedin was pretty upfront about the downsides for them. He said it's 3 to 4 times more expensive than digging a trench.
Wow, that's a big cost increase.
Yeah. And he also mentioned it could make future repairs trickier, accessing cables buried deeper underground.
How deep are we talking?
Around 10 meters deep with the drilling because of the angle they have to go in at, compared to maybe just a few meters for a standard trench.
So why do it then if it's more expensive and potentially harder to fix later?
To minimize the damage costs to the land was one reason, but crucially also to reduce that landowner resistance. He actually said their goal was to create support for the energy transition.
Interesting. So a strategic decision to invest more upfront to get the project done with less conflict.
Seems that way. A trade-off for a smoother process and better relations.
So fast forward to now, or at least when the article was written. What does it look like on the ground?
Largely back to normal, apparently. The cables are in, though not live yet at that point. And on Ari and Yvonne Verhorst's land specifically, you wouldn't even know construction had happened. No visible scars.
That's pretty remarkable considering the scale of the project. A much better outcome than a permanent trench scar.
Definitely. But it's not quite zero impact for everyone.
Right, those farmers who had the drilling entry and exit points on their land.
Yeah, they might still see some effects, like minor soil settling in those specific spots, maybe some drainage changes.
And they lost crops temporarily in the work areas, too. Access roads, storage containers, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Plus, there's still that underlying feeling for all of them, that unease about having this infrastructure under their property.
And the official record of the Zeitlich Recht, the easement, potentially affecting future property sales.
That's still a factor, yes. It's something buyers would be aware of.
But overall, it sounds like the relationship improved, that the communication and the drilling method helped build some trust.
It seems so. Ari Verhorst's final quote is quite telling. For me, it's done. We solved it in the best way. That suggests a level of acceptance, maybe even satisfaction with the resolution.
Yeah, considering where they started from, that's quite a statement.
And the final piece mentioned is just connecting these cables up to the main grid, making that power available for the business park. The final step.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive into the Hoeksche Ward situation, it really highlights that tricky balance, doesn't it?
Yeah, the big regional need for infrastructure, the technology that can help make it less painful, and then the real valid concerns of the people whose land is directly affected.
And it really underscores how important Stedin's learning curve was, adapting how they talked to people, how they actually did the work.
That shift seems absolutely crucial to getting it done in a, well, relatively collaborative way in the end.
Definitely. Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to sort of chew on. How do these essential projects play out elsewhere?
Right, think about different countries, different legal systems for land rights, different ways companies engage with communities.
What does it mean more broadly, this constant balancing act between society's energy needs and individual property rights, especially as this whole energy transition speeds up around the world? Something to think about.